Shreveport Council voted unanimously to put 5 proposals on the ballot in November.
5 bond issue proposals.
$242 million total, depending on who you talk to, whatever. You said a while back you were going to agree to just let the voters decide. Is that kind of where the whole council is?
Well, I can speak for myself. It's where I am still. And there was some discussion yesterday from Councilman Butcher and Councilman Nicholson that it was a little bigger than they wanted, but they're not the mayor. And so let's just let the mayor, like, there are things that we know we need. So let's just go ahead and put it on the ballot.
Is it too big for you?
I mean, probably. I mean, well, you know what? It's not that it's too big. It's that we did do the listening sessions. He did talk to people in every community. But without that adopted project list and seeing where it is, and maybe with water, I could see more money going to water infrastructure.
So you have kind of the same problem Aaron does, a lack of specificity. Is that fair?
There's still some time to get that together. And the thing is, the community should watch. Like, I remember looking at the entire list that was adopted when Councilwoman Bowman, as the chair, she was the chairwoman, I believe. They had a project list that was adopted prior to voting on the bond going on the ballot, but there's still time for us to do something like that, and people should be watching to see if we do.
What was it, 14, 16, 18 months ago, the people of Shreveport said no to $186 million.
So we added more.
You guys didn't even look at the 205.
We were like, can we have a pound puppy? Y'all said no.
Yeah.
Then we said, can we have a show pony? And y'all can say what you're going to say.
You guys didn't even look at, you looked at it and said no to 205 or 206 not too long ago. So why the thumb up on the 240, whatever?
It's what we have. And I think that there's something to what my colleague said about it being, you know, this might not be the way I would go about it, but we have these critical needs, and let's just put it forward and let the voters decide.
But LeVette, excuse me, Miss
know.
Fuller,
The Honorable.
my teacher,
LeVette
Miss
Fuller.
We have $48 million from the American Rescue Plan. You think you could take a chunk of that and lower this price tag of the bond issue? A reasonable human being would think that.
We have a deadline on when we can spend that funding, and I think it's like 2025 or 2024. But that means that while it's there, it's sitting in the bank and it's gaining interest, and it's also making our debt to revenue ratio look a lot better, which could in turn make our bond rating look better.
But couldn't you also use it, though, to trim the price tag of the full bond issue? I mean, and get those projects that's using that money right off. Get them moving.
I mean, do you notice I say I mean before, like, I take a deep breath and try to figure out how I'm really thinking about this?
Try this. That's a good question, Aaron.
Oh, that's a good one.
And
that's a good question, Aaron. I think that it's a possibility, but I also think that it's prerogative of the mayor and his advisors to see how much we can get so that we can spend and let that rescue money sit there and help us improve the bond rating.
$242 million right now, if that's a legit amount.
But also,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Think about this with the American Rescue Plan funding. Think about what it's actually for as far as rescue. And remember when I was here and Commissioner Jackson came on and said, if we're the same as we were with this much money sitting here, it's our own fault. That's not supposed to be status quo money. If anything, this would be a chance for us to do our own kind of New Deal where we can hire up people to take care of the critical needs that we have in a lot of different arenas, and actually see people have employment at a reasonable salary and have the materials to do what we need to do and have the equipment like the trucks and stuff that we need for public works, property standards, caseloads being brought down to a reasonable kind of volume. All of those things could be going on with that American Rescue Plan. I'd love to talk to people about that more.
Commissioner Jackson also said, pertaining to the COVID money from the feds, he said, if we get all this money, and I'm paraphrasing just a little bit, not much, Mr. Stephen also said, if we get all this COVID money, and as a city leader in 4 or 5 years, you don't see a big difference in Shreveport and Caddo Parish, we're just a bunch of losers.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, status quo money. Like,
if we get $242 million and in X number of years, Shreveport doesn't look a whole hell of a lot better, that doesn't speak well of our leadership.
Circle back to the last segment. when we talk about what's happened here with the way that we voted and the way that things were left, it's really not unlike any other time that we've had an opportunity to do something that wasn't status quo, to actually push an envelope, take a risk that might make us uncomfortable for a little while, but that might have a really good outcome and a greater reward on the other end. We are reticent to do that. And we could, I'm giving you an idea, and then Jackson is hinting that we could do something else. And I'm giving you an idea of something else that we could do. But ultimately, what do you think we're going to do? Like, what's your prediction as a community on what we're going to do? Are we going to actually push the envelope, or are we going to be status quo? And I don't disagree with you that if we have $220 million and in 4 to 5 years we look the same, that we are a failure. But the thing is, the voters have to actually vote on whether or not they want us to have that money and if they want to have to pay it back.
Go ahead. You take one.
Okay.
I'll take one. We got to go.
Kicked in.
Are you a James Green, all in for all 5? Or are you a Grayson Butcher? I like 1 or 2, and I'll decide on the others later. Where are you on the scale?
I'm looking at you with side eye. I'm none of those.
That's a good question.
So you're
Aaron.
against you're against all of
I'm
them?
not against anything. I think that, like, voting my conscience in the ballot, like, that's something that we'll end up having to make public at some point. But right now, I'm agnostic on every single one of them.
Police and fire? Police and fire, you're not for today.
No, I'm not going to let you say that I'm
Okay.
not for police and fire. What I am for is looking at what the proposals are line by line for using that funding. We've also got public safety looking at the Sears building for a potential police department. Like, all of those things are going to go into play. Like, saying, yes, you should have the money. It's going to be a hard sell to say no to public safety. But at the same time, I want to be able to say yes, and I can't wait to see it being spent in XYZ way. Like, if we're going to have me answer questions, let's go all the way in on it.
Last one. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. Last question. Let me reframe Aaron's. How do you feel if it passes? How do you feel about handing the mayor $242 million with a relatively non-specific 5 points, I guess? And what kind of input, if the bond issue is passed, do you think, what kind of input do you think the council should have?
The council's mandate is to be the checks and balances specifically on finance, right? So that's that. Like, I know that sounds like I'm answering with a Yoda kind of answer, but the truth is, our job is to be fiscally responsible. We have a fiduciary responsibility by mandate of our job to be checks and balances on the funds. But before we can even get there, I think it's going to come down to, do the citizens trust us to do that on these bond proposals?